Spider-Man No Way Home, Taverns of Tiefenthal Open Doors Expansion, and Super Skill Pinball Ramp It Up. This is Staying In.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Auld Lang Syne.
Auld Lang Syne, eh?
What a great New Year we've all absolutely had. And that Christmas, that was a treat.
That was a lovely treat.
And what a surprise twist.
To let you in on how the sausage is made, we are making this pre-Christmas and pre-New Year's, so we don't know what's going to happen. Let's cover all our bases. Oh no, lockdown again.
What letter of the Greek alphabet do we think we're on now for COVID?
Well, pi is the next one, which makes which makes the future variant sound quite tasty. Oh, have you got pie? Yeah, I've got pie. But hey, we are pretending that it's 2022.
Well, isn't it usually, traditionally, and I say that as if it's something that we've come up with, but usually this is the time in which we put our heads together and think about, well, A, did we meet our New Year's resolutions for last year? And B, what are going to be our new ones, really?
Definitely. And I think that that tradition should continue straight away. First thing I'm going to point out is there is one member of our party missing from this recording. And I think we should let the record show that I think it's out of fear of having not done or completed said resolutions that were set last year.
What was his resolution last year? Let's see if we think he did it.
Yeah, so I've got a little bit of paper here. So I, after I came home from the cinema last night, at midnight, I made myself a sandwich whilst listening to last year's New Year's Day podcast, so I could make a note of exactly what we said, verbatim in some requests. So Peter could not make the recording this evening. These were his two resolutions that he set himself. So the first one was to publish an RPG supplement. Now,
just under the radar.
Just under the radar. If you listened to the last episode, you would have heard Pete's little advert that he asked me to put in the show for him. So you know that he's completed that particular resolution.
He's getting too big for his boots now. He's outsourcing his marketing and everything.
And his second resolution, and this is the reason why he's decided to skip this call, because he knows what we would have to say about this, was that he was going to finish painting all of his minis, asterisk, and not to buy any more minis until he's finished painting the ones that he has. So I sent him a text this afternoon, and I said to him, if you could spare 5 minutes, could you give me an update on your resolutions for this year, and if you have any resolutions for 2022? Via text? Sure. I don't know why that was a stipulation of...
Over the phone? No thanks.
So he said, publish RPG supplement, done. Not buying more minis until they're all painted. Not yet complete.
Well, hang on a minute. If it's not yet complete, that means he bought more minis.
Well, no, it just means that he hasn't painted all of his minis.
But do we think he's bought more?
No, he hasn't. I know this because Pete and I had a talk when I was over at his.
Did you have to do the inventory? The year, is that why he invited you down to do the yearly inventory?
What, to audit his stuff?
Yeah, just stock check.
But he looked me dead in the eyes, and he said, "Kris, I can't buy any more."
That sounds like someone who has been buying more and has realised he has a problem and needs an intervention.
Okay, I don't think that's included in what he sent me, so this is a great surprise. So then I said, okie dokie, and do you have any resolutions for 2022? Ah, yes. 14:44. At 14:48, 4 minutes later, number 1, get fit.
I mean, this immediately brings back visual images that we all would never want to see again.
Yes. Number 2, get a copper award on Drive-Thru RPG. So just to fill in the backstory for this, basically Drive-Thru RPG awards different types of metal awards depending on how many copies of your supplement or RPG or content you're able to sell. So a copper award is 50 plus of his RPG. So Actually, he doesn't say it's for the one he's got out now, so it could be for anything. He just wants to get a copper award for something.
It could be someone else's. He's just stolen it. He just needs to get his hands on one.
That's all I can think of. Oh, yeah, and buy a house.
Yeah, okay. To be fair, I think I did that one in the past.
Obviously, recording this in the future, we don't know what's going to happen. Whatever happens, it'll be for our own safety and security, whatever. Brilliant. We will stick to the rules for the health and benefit of everyone around us. However, if last night was the last night that I got to enjoy out with friends and seeing some lovely people, then by George, it was a brilliant night, wasn't it?
It was extraordinary. I got goosebumps with Sam done.
Yeah, we went to the library.
Just sat down with some R.L. Stein.
Took out some books. Who did I see? I went to go and see the Goosebumps film. Did I go?
It's supposed to be quite good. It got quite good reviews. The one with Jack Black.
It was all right. It was all
I
right.
haven't seen it.
Apparently, there was a sequel. Apparently, but we went out and we met in the car park. We exchanged goods. Dan, I accidentally gave Kris my copy of Batman: The Long Halloween, thinking that it was Chris's, and then now Kris has just stolen it. So Kris has now got 2 copies of it. Well played. And we went for a really nice Chinese meal.
Yes.
And had some delicious food. And then we went to the cinema, to the same cinema where we saw The Suicide Squad, but it was decidedly a lot more people were there last night than...
oh, my word, yeah.
There were, yeah. It was packed because everyone was there to see the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, Spider-Man: No Way Home.
This is a trilogy of films from John Watts, who's directed them from the beginning, really, with Homecoming. And this is where, spoilers from the previous film, at the end of the previous film, Peter Parker's identity is revealed to the world, and he has to live with that fact that the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is now known by every single person. Their identity is known, and they have to try and find a way to live like that and are conscious of the impact it has on their loved ones, and also just in life in terms of how it's holding them back from doing what they want to do themselves. And I think that's something that doesn't necessarily come across in the trailers, that actually is something that really roots it in those quintessential... One of the reasons why people love Spider-Man is because he's just a kid who's down on his luck, who, despite being someone who isn't the wealthiest, he's not some rich tech billionaire, he's just a kid. And those life struggles are tempered, those life struggles are always embroiled within the struggles of being a hero.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that it's kind of something that's not really been explored in the MCU before, that whole secret identity thing and the voracious appetite for superheroes to be unmasked. Since the first Iron Man, which ends with Tony Stark saying, "I am Iron Man," Spider-Man is probably the only one that I can think of off the top of my head who has a secret identity, who is protected because he is a juvenile. Like there's a line at the start of No Way Home, and we're not going to spoil anything here. I think we'll only speak about what was probably in any of the trailers.
Yeah.
So I tell you what we'll do. This is what we'll do. We'll speak generally now about the film and how bloody great it is, and then we will have a little spoilery section which we'll put onto the end of the outro because that'll be good for our stats and Pete will be really happy. So if you want to have join in with a bit of our spoilery chat about No Way Home, we'll stick that on the end of the podcast.
Yeah, so for now we'll just, as you say, just discuss stuff that exists in the trailers, so it has been put out there by the filmmakers as kind of content that people can enjoy. But obviously if you want to be completely spoiler free, like if you have avoided trailers and everything, you can kind of maybe come back to this conversation. The kind of the timestamps will be in the episode description, so you'll be able to skip, so you can always come back to exactly where you need to be. But yeah,
absolutely. So there is a point in the start of the film, as Kris saying, where it picks up directly from the end of the last film, and Peter's there with MJ in the middle of New York, and then one of the members of the crowd says, "You're just a kid," and like it is kind of the long forgotten thing that Spider-Man is just a child, and that for me is always the most endearing part of his character, that he is a young person trying to deal with all these kind of things whilst also trying to make sure he gets the college of his choice, as in this movie.
Yeah.
And I know that, Kris, you turned to me just as the film was starting, and you said to me, one of the things you said was, I wish that this film still has those moments of dorkiness and nerdiness that have been in the other two films, especially the first film, and kind of have brought that childishness and those problems and the stresses you have as a child and as a young adult in it. Because if you've seen the trailers, then you know that this film is definitely dealing with, or seemingly deals with, lots of big world impactful like stuff. Like the premise of the film is, as we said, Peter Parker, his identity gets revealed to the world, and he enlists the help of Doctor Strange to try and help everyone forget that he is Spider-Man. And the spell may or may not go wrong. And that's about all the giveaway of the story. So that's the first thing I really liked about the film, is that it really struck that balance really well between massive cataclysmic style event, but also we're really worried about making our first choice college place and what our future's going to be, and are we going to be in the same halls at uni, and are we going to still be friends when we get there, and like that was a real nice sort of grounding for the whole piece. Just a reminder that this character that we've known now since Civil War, so quite a long time, is still a child and is still dealing with that kind of stuff, even though on the other hand they're trying to protect their loved ones from all the press attention that they get, because everyone now knows that he is Spider-Man.
I mean, I think that has been, as you say, that has been one of the great successes of kind of Tom Holland in this role. That he has that endearing kind of childishness that goes with that, and even in those moments of high action and high drama, you always have that underpinning, which gives you just a character that you can relate to more so. Kind of it separates him from kind of the rest of the MCU, and he's surrounded in an environment like when you see him go to school and how school has changed for him, and that's the point of reference that the film is showing you, because that's what's important to him. It's not just like he's not like being asked for interviews on the news and all stuff like that. It's not this big stuff. It's how do we show how life is different for him? Let's take him back to school. Let's show him how school and his schoolmates react to him. How his peers, who for these first two films, he's been a nobody. He's been laughed at. People have kind of just not even, he's been invisible. Suddenly, he is the center of attention, both kind of globally, but also just kind of in this world where he has been invisible. And I think kind of everyone has had that feeling when they were younger of being in kind of high school and feeling invisible and not having all that. So that's why everyone can empathize and see kind of elements of Spider-Man. That's what makes him such a great character. So we're having that flipped, and suddenly there's that kind of beautiful shot of when he's walking through the school and he's surrounded by classmates, all with their phones filming him, as opposed to kind of like talking or anything like that. He stops everything. And it's those moments that kind of really drill into kind of what this actually means to Spider-Man. The fact that it's been revealed. It's not just a case of everyone now knows who it is. It makes it more difficult for him to be Spider-Man. Though his world has changed. So when he approaches Doctor Strange to say kind of, I need this to stop, you understand it and you believe it, because it's not just like, I think from the trailers, because I didn't see, they brought out two kind of trailers. I only saw the first one. I avoided the second one. So most of my kind of knowledge going in was of the first trailer. And there's a sense from that trailer of the fact that kind of being a bit petty. Like, I don't like all this attention. Oh, I just want to go back the way it was. Whereas when you see the film, you see actually the weight that is on him as a result of this. You totally get the fact that he needs to change it. And it's not just about him. It's not a selfish thing, really, he's doing. It's when he sees the effect it has on his family and his friends and how it's ruining their lives just by association. It really kind of gives you such a deep look into that character. And for me, it's Peter Parker's film. It's not Spider-Man's film. It's his internal conflict throughout of how to move it, how to deal with this dual identity. We've never really had that in Homecoming and Far From Home. He's had to deal with people not finding out, but it's just kind of been a bit fun, and he's had to put the costume on in weird situations and try to come up with the funny excuses. This is showing a real kind of understanding of actually what does it mean to be both Spider-Man and Peter Parker. You can't be two people. And Doctor Strange says that. It says things are going wrong, not because you've been kind of outed as Spider-Man. Everything's happening because you're trying to be these completely different people. And that's the heart of the film, and how he can deal with that and how he can move forward with that. And it's no surprise that kind of the film hangs on him, and he kind of shoulders that incredibly well. But you could drill down that whole film just into that internal struggle that he has and how it affects the decisions he makes throughout the film and the choices he makes for good and for ill. All of those things come back to that same conflict within himself as to what to do next. And so when stuff goes bad, as happens in every Marvel film, that's not a spoiler, that's knowing what Marvel films do. You have such a personal connection to what's happening that it just carries it through. I have to say, like, a couple of episodes ago, we talked about Eternals. I obviously really wasn't a fan. I didn't like not liking that film and talking about not liking it. This, for me, it's gone straight in there as one of my favourite films. I'm looking at it as the top tier films. The likes of your Endgame, the likes of your Black Panther. That's where it's coming from me. I've always enjoyed the Spider-Man films. They've always been great, and I think they have progressively got better. I think there is an argument to be made that the Spider-Man trilogy of the MCU is possibly the best trilogy. It's probably between that and Captain America. The Avengers perhaps drops down a little bit with Ultron, but the storyline that they have told over these three films has been beautifully told, very nuanced, and has developed both Peter Parker and all the characters around him in a lovely way that you believe and you kind of love all those characters, which is the antithesis of how I felt with the previous film. So that's kind of where I walked out the cinema with literally the opposite feeling that I'd had previously. And obviously I've got 2 films worth of build up for this, so that makes a huge difference. But I came out with a smile on my face of like, that's Marvel on its A game, that is.
But there's also, as we left the cinema, me and Kris, like we were feeling the same and we were buzzing. But Kris, you said to me something that was quite interesting, and it's no spoiler to say that there are returning characters in this film.
They're in the trailer.
Yeah, I know. And like the returning characters are incredible. Like one in particular just turns up and just chews all the scenery, and I had a smile on my face every time that they are on the screen, and just would have had a whole film just with them in it. It was incredible. However, I do agree with you, Dan, and I do agree that it's an incredible denouement to this trilogy, and we don't yet know whether Tom Holland's going to return as Spider-Man. He said he doesn't really want to. He said he didn't want to be Spider-Man after he's 30, and I think now he's like 27 or 28 or something like that, or maybe even 26. Anyway, he's very quickly approaching 30, and he said he didn't want to do Spider-Man after that. So it could be, possibly, it probably won't be because they'll throw money at him. It could be possibly like the last time we see Tom Holland as Spider-Man. And I think it was a wonderful way to finish that trilogy. However, Kris, you turned to me and said something. Now, what would that film mean to someone who didn't see the original films where some of these returning characters come from? Like, what does that film mean to someone who's, say, like 12 years old or 10 years old? Like, who didn't grow up with that, who didn't see those previous 5... Spider-Man films? Like, does it actually hit as? Would it actually hit as much? Does it actually mean as much to those people? Like, how much is nostalgia playing into how much that you liked that film?
And like I was saying beforehand, like Eternals moved me as a human being. This one moved me as a fan. And I do think that in a strange sort of way, Eternals might age a little bit better just because there's no previous knowledge needed. Whereas this one, like, it's hit me right now, right in my heart, pretty much, this film. Like, I will never ever forget that experience of being at that cinema last night, seeing that. It was a very, very special moment. But I'm very curious to know, I don't know, 20 years in the future, with audiences coming in, perhaps discovering the MCU, let's watch them from the beginning. Would that actually land in the same way? And that's not a criticism by any means. Marvel have played an absolute blinder here. But I could imagine a lot of people looking at this 25 or so series of films and thinking, oh my gosh, that feels now too impenetrable to me.
Especially the way that currently Spider-Man sits in terms of who actually owns it, and we have no idea how different fiefdoms of streaming services are going to be divided up in this imaginary future. So even trying to catch up on the previous non-MCU Spider-Man films to try and get some sort of basis of the characters that have been pushed into this movie might be a big deal. Like, it might not be just as easy as sitting down and pressing play. It might be, 3 separate subscription services or whatever, bonkers or something like that. Like, it is possibly the only thing that puts a downer on this movie. And I think that, along with Kris, like, I will never forget that evening that I saw it. But I genuinely, I don't think it will age as perfectly as some of the other Marvel films. I don't think its impact will exist. Its impact will dilute over time, which is not to say it's a bad movie. I think it's a perfect movie for the exact time and for this exact audience, which has literally grown up with Spider-Man. But I can't see it aging as well as other Marvel films for a different audience.
It will be, because I went to see it by myself. Like, my wife has watched all the Marvel films. She's not as big a fan of me, but over kind of the first lockdown, we watched kind of the entirety of them. So she does enjoy them. She does watch them when they come out. But obviously we have kids, so she stayed home, and I'm obviously a bigger fan, so I went to the cinema to see it. So I think she will enjoy it, but I would be interested to see, because she won't have watched the original films, both Spider-Man 1 to 3 and then the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. She won't have watched those. So when kind of some of the villains that kind of show up as we've said in the trailer, like, I have a reaction to them, like, when, like, I know them, and so I'm excited by that. Now, she won't have that connection, so I would be interested to see how well that movie plays without that element. I think
absolutely.
I think the writing, and I think the performances, and I think the drama and the emotion that the film carries through is strong enough that it won't lose all that much by not having that nostalgia element. Obviously, that isn't any time you're going to bring back an old character. Anytime you do that, you're invoking nostalgia. So if you don't have that, it's going to suffer a little. I do think the film is strong enough to overcome that, though, because the center of that film is still the character that we know, and that is the character from the MCU. That is kind of the Tom Holland Peter Parker. That he is the center of this film. Him, Michelle, MJ, and Ned, those three sit in the center of this, and they're the people we've been carried on this journey with. And I think because that's the core, it will last. But I'd be interested to see how someone who doesn't have the same connections I do reacts to it.
So you said your resolutions for 2021. Can you remember?
Yes, one of them was to get a book chapter published.
Good.
Is that correct?
Yep. And yes, and it was already with the publisher when he said this. So
definitely, I stacked the deck in my favour. Definitely, but academic publishing, does take a while. Considering I wrote that years ago. Mm-hmm. And the other one, I believe, was Staying Alive.
There was Staying Alive. There's another 2, that you
Really?
mentioned. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Keep traveling? Usually that's generally my priority.
In 2021, you were going to say keep traveling.
What I mean is, like, I don't mean like traveling in the
Never
sense
stop.
of like Phineas Fogg. What I mean is, like, you know, I got to see my mates. I got to stay over at Dan's, stayed at Pete's.
Okay, you stayed over at mine. Actually, did you? I don't think you did, actually. Anyway, thanks. No, one was to run an RPG.
Oh yeah, done that.
You very much done that.
Yeah,
You're doing that.
Yeah.
Carry on. And the other one was to run to the end of Fellowship of the Ring.
Very, very close. So when I first moved to where I'm living now, which is about 3 years ago, it was around the time we were deciding to one of our many New Year's resolutions to get fit, and we'd done the 5K under 30, and I think it was around the houses challenge we were doing, or maybe that came afterwards when we were trying to run the distance between our homes in a year. And that's when we had the image of Pete naked on his exercise bike, lest we forget.
Which has now come screaming back to me and will never leave me again.
So I thought it would be quite interesting to take probably one of my most favourite stories of all time, which is The Lord of the Rings, and to almost narrativize or gamify my exercise and run the distance it took to go from Hobbiton to Mordor. So every time I go on a run, I log my result, and Dan and I have got this Google Sheets that we've done, which has got a little graph on it and things, and we can see where we are. So every time I've run, I've logged my timing on there, and I have now got to the point now where I'm on my way to Lothlorien, really. I've left the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, and I'm on my way to Lothlorien.
Yeah, you were at the Mines of Moria, I think.
Yeah.
Start 2021.
Yeah, it's a hell of a journey. The full journey is about, I think it's just shy of 1,000 miles or something like that.
Blood and sand.
They walked a long distance, but no, I didn't get to the end of the Fellowship of the Ring.
What a shame.
I know.
So 2022, it's a new year, new prospects, new ideas. Kris, what are you going to do?
I am going to hopefully buy a house. That'll be a massive achievement for me, genuinely, because I procrastinate quite a lot. I'm not very good at being a grown-up or an adult. Not that owning a house makes you a grown-up or an adult. It makes you extremely fortunate, which, you know, I'm in that position now where I am fortunate enough that I can put down a deposit for a house, but actually getting the motivation to want to do so, that's going to be my challenge, really. I think that's the big one for me. So I'm pinning everything. I'm putting like everything, all my chips are on that one, on just the roulette wheel of life.
1-1. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see how it goes. I don't want to start this section because I started all the other sections.
Yeah, I will start it then. What do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about pinball first.
Okay. I was listening to The Who the other day. So, Sam, super skilled pinball, ramp it up.
Yes. You you've seen what I was going to bring, and it is super skill pinball, ramp it up. You might recognise the slightly convoluted title from the last time we spoke about a super skill pinball game, which we did on this podcast. That was Super Skill Pinball 4K'd, which was never the most appealing title, but it was a blooming great game, designed by the excellent Jeff Engelstein. And the company that gave us this game, WizKids, got in touch with me, and they were like, do you want to play the sequel? Or at least, is it a sequel? It's a bit more like DLC, but it comes in its own separate box. It's like a standalone expansion, basically. You don't need to own 4K to play Ramp It Up, but they share like similar mechanics, basically. It's basically like 4 new pinball tables on which to play. So to briefly go over what Super Skill Pinball is, I guess, now as a franchise, which I guess it's kind of branched out into. It's a roll and write game, but it's using a pinball table or simulating the act of playing pinball on a pinball table. So each of the games, 4K and Ramp It Up, comes with 4 different tables in the box. And they tend to do really, really interesting things with both the mechanics of rolling dice and filling in things with a little dry white pen, but also with the genre of pinball tables, which I don't have much experience in, except for that one time that we went to that place in Bury, Kris, and played Adam's Family Pinball, but is a pastime which, from my limited knowledge of it, is a lot more complex and skillful and deep than I first thought, really. So with Ramp It Up, Jeff, good old Jeff, has released 4 new tables basically to play on, and I think all around they are the best 4 tables out of the 8 that are now available. And I think that if I was going to suggest which of the 2 that you would buy, if you were interested in, if you're a roll and write fan or a pinball fan, then I'd definitely go for Ramp It Up. And I think the best way to just describe this game is just describe the tables you can play on. So each game, each version of the game comes with basically an introductory table, which kind of helps teach you how to play, gets you through the mechanics, teaches you how like the ball essentially simulates falling in between different zones, how it hits bumpers, and how the flippers work. And on this one, it's called Go for Gold, which is a wonderful play on words and a pun. But it's a very, very simple table. There's not that much surprises in it. Just eases you in, and you have a good old time. Where this game really ramps it up,
here we go,
is in the next few tables. And honestly, there are some things and mechanics that some of these games explore that really just got those parts in my mind where I can sit there thinking and going through permutations for quite a long time. Like, my original review of Super Skill Pinball 4K was that it was the most fun. It was one of the best solitaire games I've ever played. And this new release has just cemented that fact in my head that I could not imagine a situation where I could play this with other people, because I just feel so pressured into making a decision that I don't think I'd enjoy it so much. There was something delightful about me being able to, I'd take this into work with me, I play it on my lunch breaks, I'd just sit there and I'd just be playing with a table and trying to just get a high score with it.
Making the sounds.
And yeah, making the sounds that bing, 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 pow, 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 pow. And doing all that on my own, there was just a lovely joy about having that to myself. It's a little bit like Gentle Rain, but a bit more of a bit more thrilling than Gentle Rain is meditative.
Yeah,
that makes
a lot of sense.
That makes sense. So the other tables are. So there is one which is a wrestling tag team table, which is the only one I haven't tried because you need a partner to play that with. So I'm really interested to see how that shapes up, where it's a roll and write game on a pinball table, but each of you would play 2 separate wrestlers that can actually help each other and tag in and tag out at certain times. There's another one which takes place on a race course where your dice rolls are manipulated and affected by the current speed that your car is traveling at. And that just split my mind in a way that I wasn't expecting, that I not only had to plan where my ball was going to go, but I also had to manage the speed of a car with my dice throws, like putting the brakes on or speeding up accordingly to try and make sure I was hitting certain areas of the table. But the one that really stood out for me is the one set in a bank heist. And I think this one really shows off the skill, the thematic skill, and the application of it just impeccably so, that just through rolling dice and moving this little silver ball around, it was able to replicate the feeling of going into a casino and performing a heist. So there's a little area where you have to roll certain numbers to hire your crew, and they give you certain bonuses when you go up and do the heist. And then when you actually go and do the heist, there's a little guard that goes on rotation, and if he catches you in certain areas while you're performing, or like raiding the safe, or going for the gemstone, or raiding the one-armed bandits, he'll put you in jail. And there's little like locks that you have to go to with certain numbers to unlock them, and pyramids that you have to climb in order to get to the best loot. And it really felt like I was playing Burgle Brothers, a pinball machine. And it was at that point that I thought, yeah, this game is really something special. Like, I've never really felt this way with a roll and write game before. Usually they're very quite abstracted and interesting puzzles, and I absolutely adore the genre, but the actual real application of theme was just something I've not experienced before. It was really, really good.
And can I ask, because I remember playing 4K, that there was different difficulty levels with the tables. Is that the same for this?
I think it's slightly different in this. It definitely feels like they're of similar. Except for Go for Gold, they're all of similar difficulty, but the puzzle is a lot different. In 4K, it definitely felt like ramping up in difficulty as you were playing each table, which I felt could be a little off-putting in the end, to know that, well, the next table's only going to be harder, the next table's only going to be harder. Here it feels a lot more like what am I in the mood for this evening? Like what here's my menu of boards that I can pick from.
Interesting.
To play with.
My next question was that if you were in a wrestling match and you had to tag either Dan or myself in, I'd wear my contacts. I wouldn't be wearing my glasses. If that changes things.
Well, my question back to you is, what kind of wrestler am I?
I'm going to open this. I'm going to throw this over to you, Dan, who knows a little bit more about wrestling than I.
No, I want to hear your view, Kris.
Suggest I do.
What's my fighting style? What's my entrance music?
Greco-Roman? I don't know.
Greco-Roman. So Kurt Angle.
Right. Okay. We'll do this a bit differently. Okay. So Kris, we have to work out not what his fighting style is, because you might not know that. We're working out what's his wrestling persona going to be, because that's more in your wheelhouse that you can contribute towards that. I'm just thinking.
I don't know. Sam's fighting style. I think he's a bit of a dancer, I'd say. I imagine him kind of peacocking his way around. You wouldn't be able to get a hold of him. He'd be ducking and weaving.
He'd be doing flips and jumps and flips.
I just think he'd just be fidgeting quite a bit back and forth. Like you wouldn't be able to grab a hold of him.
Okay, to try and transpose that onto modern day wrestlers, for anyone listening who is aware of that, I would gonna say that I'm based on Kris's description of your fighting style, Sam. Your equivalent fighter is a gentleman called Matt Riddle.
Oh God, he just poses conundrums. So yeah, that kind of furtive fighting style.
So I'm just doing a quiz on haywise.com to see what kind of wrestler I'm going to be. Pick a fighting style to defend yourself. Mixed martial arts.
Really, that's the question, isn't it? Pick a fighting style to defend yourself.
Yeah, to be fair, you've done the job that you asked us to do.
I would have opened with that.
What's your favourite breakfast food? Number 2 is eggs, and more eggs. I feel like I've got to pick that one. If I had a spirit animal, what would I be? Loyal dog. Oh, here we go. Okay. Right, after all those questions, I finally found out which WWE wrestler I would be.
Here you go.
Okay, so Dan, you can search this person because I don't know who they are.
I'll know who it is.
I am Sonya Deville.
Okay. She's kind of the mixed martial arts, kind of an authority figure.
I'm honest, direct, and true to myself.
I think that description does not cover her current character.
Oh. Oh well, that quiz was worth the malware it's no doubt put onto my phone.
So surely then you want to tag somebody in who complements that. They may not embody it completely, but they fill a gap, so to speak.
I would say actually that I'm bringing Dan into the mix. First of all, he's tall.
You've made a horrible mistake.
All right, okay.
Because
Kris.
Kris has got the speed and the stamina that I'd be out in about 5 minutes.
I'm scrappy.
He's yeah.
I just think Kris would just enter the ring, do some capoeira, and then be very out of his depth very quickly.
And also out of breath.
I feel like Dan. I think you just have a better handle on the situation.
I can imagine Kris trying to do something, just getting thrown out of the ring, and then just popping back up again and be like, oh, what?
That was basically every judo class I did as a child.
Oh dear. Right, Dan, you might as well go next.
I think last year I just said I wanted to get fit. Being healthy and getting fit.
Quote, I'm in a bit of a rut. I want to get out of that rut. Kris, if your body was a temple, what kind of temple would it be?
Oh, yeah.
Dan.
You're really stumped by this.
Dan, some sort of meditative yoga retreat? Basically, I don't know. I just want to eat a bit better and go for a run.
Yeah, that printed on a fridge magnet.
It's a real kind of thing where you get the picture of like a vast landscape with a sunrise, and over the top of it, I don't know, I just want to get healthy and go for a run. So it's not quite the same. I did and I didn't do this. So kind of the running kind of got affected by the lockdown and stuff like that. I wasn't really happy with kind of finding places to kind of go and interacting with people. Obviously, I had 2 young kids, that kind of threw a spanning works for that. But the healthy eating, like I was like on it for like 6 months. Like I went for like 6 months without any carbs at all. I was smashing it. And then as inevitably happens, you let yourself like have a little bit of treat here and there. And then suddenly, well, I've had one, I can have another, and it snowballs and snowballs. And I'm kind of back in old habits now. I wouldn't say I'm in a rut, but I'm planning on next year kind of doing the same thing of getting back into it, but trying to maintain it for the entire year is the thing. Now that I know I can do it, I know what works for me, I know what I will enjoy, and the kind of the diets that I know I can do. It's not going to be too taxing. That are really good, but not kind of too restrictive as well. I'm going to try and do that and maintain it for the course of a year. And I want to push myself to do more exercise. Like when we did like round the houses challenge, like a few years back, I absolutely loved that. And I did more exercise than I've ever done before, and I loved it. But it's that thing of if you fall out of sync with it, it's difficult to get back on track. So there's that, but that's a simple one. That's copying last year, so I don't feel like that's good enough this year. So something different is I bought not long ago a Kindle. So I want to start reading a bit more. And so I want to set aside like a New Year's resolution to encourage me to read. So I want to have a resolution to read at least 1 book a month, which is not difficult, but it's also kind of, it's a commitment. So at least 1 book a month, but it has to be kind of, with kind of Amazon Prime and stuff, you get free books. I don't want it to just be the free book that I got this month. I want it to be a good book. So I want it to be something that I have gone and sourced and found a good book and tried to be something different. I don't want to just read a crime novel every single month because I don't think I'm going to get a lot out of that. But I want to read different types of stories. That's my goal, to kind of expand my reading knowledge over the kind of the course of the 12 months. It might be an old book, it might be a brand new book, it might be anything. But I think that's something that I can do and I can enjoy, and it's achievable.
I've got that as my as one of my targets on my Time Cap app, to read a book every month / comic, just in case my book is too long.
And you need to quickly read something.
Yeah. And I know at the moment I'm reading volume 2 of the Tales of the Condor, which is horribly prefaced on the front cover of the book as being the Chinese Lord of the Rings. But really what that means is they're big big books, like
so
fantastical epics.
You're not classing like a single issue comic as being something that you've read, which literally will take 5 minutes.
Like a graphic novel, I'd say, it counts as something that I would complete. Yeah, I don't completely cheat the system, but
well, it's your system.
It's my system, so it's a book / graphic novel. But I think that counts just as I think you get just as much from a graphic novel that you do a book. It's got to be some sort of complete story.
Dan's reminded me, actually, I forgot there is another resolution. I'm just going to take one of my chips off.
Okay.
Because I remember this year, just the one, because the big house is going to be a big thing for me if I get it. This 2021, last year, I set myself the challenge of watching all of Sergei Tarkovsky's films the whole year. A fantastic Soviet filmmaker, a legendary filmmaker who was incredibly influential on a lot of modern cinema today. And I've realised every year I'm going to pick a different director and I'm going to use the year to watch all of their films. And my director of choice for 2022 is going to be Akira Kurosawa and their Samurai collection. And I've never watched a Kurosawa film. I became really invested in and interested in them after playing Ghost of Tsushima pretty much a year ago, actually, in fact. Particularly with like the Kurosawa filter you've got on there in the photo mode. I was like, I really need to watch these films. And I know these films were hugely influential on filmmakers, including like George Lucas in the original Star Wars trilogy. And I've never watched a Kurosawa film at all. So I'm going to, in 2022, spaced out throughout the year, I will, by the end of it, watch every single Kurosawa samurai film.
If the Bare Naked Ladies were any judge of cultural impact, then Kurosawa, he make mad films.
Good point, Sam.
It's no lie on this show that we love an insert, not just in episodes that we do where we insert ads of our own products.
Well,
willy-nilly by Pete's RPG. Let's get his resolution done. That'd be really nice for him. But also, I admit that sometimes if I've had too much alcohol, the craziest thing I will do is go online and buy inserts for board games.
Oh, you're reckless, Sam. You're reckless.
I know.
You're out of control.
Osprey Games were really kind to send Undaunted reinforcements to me the other day, and that just got me really excited because it actually has enough space in to fit everything that's come with the game beforehand. So Undaunted North Africa and Undaunted Normandy all fit into this one giant box. I was really appreciative of that. There's a stop motion animation on our Instagram channel if you want to have a look at that. And Kris, can we just say this is a note now that you and I will talk about the Undaunted series at some point on this podcast?
Yeah.
Because we've flirted around it quite a lot, but it genuinely is one of our favourite games. And there's a new solo version that's come with reinforcements that I'm desperate to try. So we will do that. We've said it now, and unless you edit this out, then we're committed. But the last insert that I bought drunk was actually Kris, it was on the night of your birthday celebrations when we had all those whiskey sours.
Yes.
Because one of the games that I brought then was Taverns of Tiefenthal.
Love this game.
Which is, it's incredible. It's by one of my favourite designers of all time, Wolfgang Warsch. The Mind, Quacks of Quedlinburg, Illusion. It hit after hit after hit.
Everything he touches is gold.
Yeah, I think Dan, you must be a big fan of his because every game that I've ever shown you of his, you've either ended up buying or I've just given you a copy of it. Like The Mind and Illusion. I remember we played Illusion at UK Games Expo.
Did you say Taverns of Tiefenthal was one of his? Yeah, because
Yes.
I've not played that one. But yeah, it's the small kind of very quick and easy, very simple kind of card games. I mean, The Mind was my first entry point into that. And then obviously kind of you talk about him kind of incessantly. And then we moved on to Illusion when we went to the Expo in Birmingham.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. The kind of games for me anyway. So some of these games, like The Mind, like Illusion, as soon as I've played it, like it's one of those things where before I've even finished playing it, I've already gone onto Amazon and I've bought a copy of it for myself. It's that kind of instant impact of I get this.
Absolutely.
This is excellent. This is easy because the people I'm more likely to play with don't play games regularly, so it needs to be something that can be easily understood very quickly. Those are the ones that really kind of attract me for him, and he's fantastic at them.
He is. He's very good at that small box stuff. Well, Taverns was kind of the sort of culmination of quite a lot of his works. It was definitely this blend of a lot of his games all merged into one, really. Again, bit of a broken record on my part. This is a game that we've spoken about before on the podcast. I can't remember what episode. And it's a game that I absolutely love. However, the box is a bit of a dumpster fire or a trash heap when it comes to actually organising it. And made even worse so because the kind people at Coiled Spring sent me the expansion. It's called the Open Doors expansion for Taverns of Tiefenthal. With the idea there's the game is that you're running this pub in Germany. You and your mates, the other people around the table are each running a pub, and basically you've got to run the best pub. You've got to attract the right clients. You've got to make sure you're brewing the right beer. You've got artists who come in and entertain the people around. You've got schnapps you flow in. You've got to give monks lots of beer, and they'll do things for you. It's absolutely wonderful little management game. But the original game itself came with 4 modules, which are essentially things that you could add on or take away from the base game to kind of give you like, would you call them expansions, Kris, or are they just kind of like different flavors of the same thing?
They were different menus almost, weren't they? You could kind of you could build your meal out of. And I remember we talked about this in episode 88 of the pod.
Well done.
Saves me a job in the edit. But like, and again, that is as you say, a trademark of Warsch. Like everything from that to Quacks of Quedlinburg, where you can flip the cauldron over and you've got another variant of the game there. He just gives and gives and gives, which I really, really love. So you already feel like when you've bought the base game that it's already come with the expansions.
Yes, it's really weird. And now there's another expansion on top of those. So now Open Doors adds another 4 modules on top of the 4 that came in the actual base game. And I remember when I was setting it up at our friend's house, and it was just like a box full of plastic baggies. And it took me an age to set up because it was just an absolute mess of plastic and things in bags. And and I love things in bags and I love things being organised, but it was so disastrous that was it. Just bought an insert, and the inserts changed my life. But the expansion itself, I think, is, if you've got Taverns of Tiefenthal, I think the easiest thing to say is like, this is just more to the game. It adds more. It doesn't really feel like it's overcomplicating things. It's just more choices to select from a menu in terms of what do we fancy this evening. We could a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, or I really like that expansion, or I really like that module. Let's play with those 2 this evening. There's like one, Kris, where it's like you had this little attachment on the top of your pub, which was like some bedrooms.
Oh, it's lovely.
So you could have people staying over in your pub for the first time. There's another one which introduces critics, which I really like the idea of, and a
sommelier as well.
There's a sommelier, which kind of, you're not only brewing beer, but you're also serving wine, which is a really nice like touch to sort of elevate this status of going from just running this bar to then running this really popular like establishment, which offers more than just a place to sit, have a bit of food, and have a pint of beer. There's also one of the modules goes on about pleasing the mayor of the town, and like it comes with this whole board where the mayor will have certain things that they want people to achieve in order for them to be impressed. So you're not just trying to impress people that are coming to visit your tavern, but also you're trying to meet these objectives to to impress the mayor of Tiefenthal, and it's just incredible, and it's more of the same, and I just love the variety that comes with this game, and I think that it is a bit of a shame that if you already own the game and you want to get more of this expansion, I really feel like you have to buy the insert with it, because Kris, you've seen it pre and post insert, and played the game pre and post insert.
Yeah.
And it borders on unplayable, really, when it's just like bags of plastic.
I mean, you don't want a game where the setup lasts just as long as the play.
No.
And it's a real shame because actually, like, one of the things that I was a bit wary about, because it had been a while since we played Taverns of Tiefenthal, not just because we didn't like it, we loved that game, it's just you've got so many games that it just fell by the wayside a little bit. And I was a bit worried, okay, right, I've got to remember the rules of this game and also learn these new expansions. But Warsch does that really clever thing that you don't often see with expansions, where he gives you enough of something new to feel like there's a change has occurred, but not so much that it feels like you're having to learn a lot more rules. And it just slips in effortlessly, like the modules themselves click in and attach themselves really in a satisfactory manner around your own respective pub.
Yeah. And being able to hand someone something as part of the insert and know that that is everything they're going to need, it doesn't and knowing that that's everything they're going to need doesn't matter what module that we're going to play. In that little box is everything that they need to progress through the game, rather than, oh, here are a couple of chits in this baggie, here are another couple of things. I've forgotten these things, let me just dig around here to go and get, like, especially, when you're introducing the game to someone for the first time, like, oh, I've got this great game called Taverns, like, let me get it down from the shelf. Oh my God, like, sorry, let me just try and find, no, I'm missing this now. Oh, I've got to go and get this. Like, I feel like that's really off-putting can be quite off-putting to quite a lot of people. So it really brings a game to life. And I think it would be a massive shame for people picking up this expansion to get the most out of it, to not have something like the insert, the folded space insert is the one that I got, but I think there are others available, not to have that as well, because it's a massive, massive advantage to really getting this game to the table as much as possible, because it's staggering. I absolutely love it. Right, let's move on to me. My resolutions last year. Do you remember?
I remember the time cap app. You were being very, very strict with yourself and very diligent.
I mean, be honest, Sam, did you remember yours before you re-listened to the episode?
Yes.
Okay.
I remembered one of the two. The other one I forgot about. But I completed it accidentally. So the first one was crack an egg with one hand.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Did that in February. Smashed it.
Yeah, that's a lot harder than buying a house.
It. Yeah. And my other one was one lunch per week that doesn't include a sandwich. And I did this. I kind of forgot about it halfway through the year, but I carried it on unbeknownst to me, because I took up intermittent fasting, which consequently led to me not eating a sandwich at least twice a week for lunch. So it's all sorted.
Does it count if you haven't had any lunch?
Yes.
Yeah, it does, was. Speaking as somebody who also struggles not to have a sandwich for lunch, what, like other people out there, what is the go-to lunch that is an alternative to, say, a sandwich?
Salad.
Yeah.
Cereal.
Just on its own?
Well, no, not on its own. You can have whatever you want with it.
Don't just open up a bag of lettuce and chow on down.
Nuts, pulses, grains, meats, other types of salad, dressing.
You could make yourself a sandwich, but instead of bread, you could have a lettuce cup.
Now, Dan, I don't want to extend this because there's other stuff for us to discuss in this podcast recording, but did you hear Sam slip in there very quickly cereal as a lunch alternative?
Well, that's why I'd have when on my fast days, I'd tend to skip breakfast, and then I'd have 200 calories in the afternoon, which would be a slim bowl of cereal with 100 ml of
Isn't a slim bowl
soy.
a plate?
But I lost 2 stone. It was great.
I know,
I felt better.
It's amazing.
And now I've given up caffeine and I feel even better. Which
You've given up caffeine?
Yeah, I know.
Oh my gosh. Detox City Centre over there. That's incredible.
It's not even a detox. I genuinely think that I'm going to keep on going because I feel more awake in the mornings. I feel more awake now than I ever have on caffeine. It's really, really odd. Like waking up in the morning and feeling like just on it rather than, oh, I need a tea. Like, it's just really strange. It's odd. But yeah, I think I'm gonna keep that up.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's bonkers. And now I've got tons of tea in my house that I don't know what to do
fair,
with.
A few times in recent years, I've bought you tea for your birthday because you like tea so much.
I do love tea.
I also think, Dan, that because I understand this is a recent change to your life, Sam.
Yes.
It'll be too late for certain people who bought him Christmas presents, perhaps. It's like that auntie who gets you the same bottle of tea in her ear every year.
It's a bit like this Doctor Who shirt that I'm wearing that my mother-in-law kindly bought me, thinking, obviously, he's the kind of guy who must like Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Well, look at him. He walks around reading Batman all the time, drinking posh tea. He's got to. And it'll break her heart if she ever found out that.
I mean, you are wearing it, so clearly you like it.
I know, because it's like a nighttime shirt. Got my Jimmy Jams on, ready to go to bed. I'll have a lemon and ginger tea, and then I'll go to bed.
Oh, God. I mean, we're still sticking with how the sausages made. We're doing New Year's Eve together, you and I. I thought Pete was the one who always used to get early nights on New Year's Eve.
Oh dear. Oh.
That was another episode of Staying In with Sam Turner, Dan Frost, and myself, Kris Darby. Wow. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year. It's been one hell of a year. It's had its highs, its lows, its weird bits, but well done on making it to level 2022. If you want to get in touch with us at all, you can contact us in a variety of ways. There's a good old-fashioned email, stayinginpodcast@gmail.com, or if you prefer the social media feeds, @stayinginpod has you covered for our Facebook, our Twitter, and our Instagram as well. I just want to take this opportunity to help my dear pal Pete with his New Year's resolution, and to just remind you of his fantastic RPG that he's put together, which you can find on Drive-Thru RPG, and it is called the Cat Cot Collection. So that's Cat Cot with 2 T's at the end of that, really, the Cat Cot Collection. If you just go onto Drive-Thru RPG and search for it, you'll be able to find it. It's a fantastic one-on-one RPG, 1 keeper and 1 investigator. It'll take you around 1 to 3 hours to play. What I really, really loved about it is the fact that not only is it dripping with theme, and Pete's put a lot of effort into that, but secondly, is it's really refreshing for me to experience the Cthulhu kind of mythos, but within Bristol. And that's really, really interesting. You know, for me, often I see the kind of this theme, let's say, this world, as something that's very distant, and to have something that's relatively local to me was a real treat to experience, and an utter joy to be able to experience that with the designer themselves, really. So that was a real good thrill, and I can't recommend it enough to you, really. So head on over to Drive-Thru RPG and have a look at the Cat Cot collection. I also wanted to take this opportunity to just say thank you for listening to us over this last year. I do this podcast to have this opportunity, really, to hang out with my friends, really, and they are all pretty much brothers to me by now. And to know that I've got this entire audio archive of us all hanging out through these various points in our lives as we've moved all around the place, as big things have happened to us, has just been an utter treat and utter joy, really. And it has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege, really, to spend time with these people. And hopefully, hopefully you enjoy it as much as I do, really. Okay, that's enough nattering from me. I'm going to leave you now to our spoiler-filled chat where Dan, Sam and I talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. And I cannot impress upon you enough, if you've not yet seen this film, then please do yourself a favour and just end the podcast here now. Go and see it. It's going to be in the cinemas for quite a while. It's the first film to make $1 billion since 2019. So it's going to be sticking around for a while. So I urge you to hie thee to your local cinema, and if you feel safe to do so, obviously, and watch it before listening to this next section of the pod. But for those who have, I'm going to leave you now to quite a long chat about what we made of this incredible picture.
Shall we do spoilies? Oh, shall we do spoilies?
I have to say, like, we can be in kind of spoilery area here.
Yeah, let's do it. We're spoiling things now.
Yeah, because you mentioned kind of the experience of being in the cinema.
Oh my God.
I don't know about you. I mean, like, there was a smattering of applause at the end. I've never really had that before. That was a bit strange. What I've definitely not had before is kind of big cheers in the cinema. I don't know if you have. Like, I think we've all seen those videos of like Endgame, like the portals.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, religiously.
Which for me is up there as one of the greatest scenes in cinema history. Like, I can watch that one scene on my phone, apropos nothing else, and it still gives me goosebumps. It gives me the feels. It almost brings me to tears. It's that strong and emotive. And you watch those videos of people and the reaction to that happening and the cheers and the build, and suddenly it's amazing. I had that in this film. That moment when Ned opens the portal and then in the distance you see a Spider-Man. And I didn't, my brain didn't click that at first. My brain at first thought that was Tom Holland.
No, but Sam's did. Sam nudged me and he goes, "No, Kris, it's not him. It's..."
Yeah. There was a ripple around of people going, of like gasps. And suddenly everyone, because of that, everyone started to understand. And it built and it built and it built. And then you realise that it's not Tom Holland. And suddenly you're like, oh my God. And then it's a case of, who is it? And then he takes it off and it's Andrew Garfield. And the place erupted. And it was a surreal experience. I'm not someone who makes noise in the cinema. And I don't cheer. That's not what I do. But I don't. I'm
That's not
processing.
I am enjoying
processing.
This, but I'm not going to vocalise my emotion
I'm not
in any way.
going to sit in the cinema and whoop and cheer, especially if I'm sat by myself.
I would bloody hugging Kris. I was
oh
so
my
excited.
Gosh, genuinely, we clung to each other, didn't we, Sam?
Oh, because the first one, like, I think most people knew. I think that Andrew Garfield was probably the one that everyone knew was going to be in it in some capacity. And I was of the opinion that I'd rather have all three, Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire and Tom Holland, or none at all. Like, I think it would have been a little bit cheap just to have Andrew Garfield. So when I saw Andrew, I was like, oh my God, Kris. And I was there, like, holding him in the cinema when they did it again. And then he walks in, like, Tobey Maguire.
Honestly, my past and my present just collided, because I remember being in media studies doing A-level, writing my 2002 essay on the rise of comic book films, and Spider-Man was my case study.
Absolutely.
Just incredible.
I heard the, is it Chad Kroger? I heard the...
the hero.
Yeah, I heard
the
that Chad Kroger soundtrack ringing in my ears as Tobey Maguire walked in there. I said to Kris afterwards, I said, it skirted the line very thinly between epic reunion and the welcome to the 20th anniversary reunion special of Spider-Man. We brought them all here tonight. But I think that's just part of the whole zeitgeist at the moment. I think that's just like permeates in the film. Like, we had the Friends reunion, 20-year reunion, whatever, like the Harry Potter 20-year reunion or whatever is coming up like soon, like Sex and the City's like that big reunion's happening on TV at the moment. Like, it's just like part of our culture, which I think gives it a little bit of that, like, almost gave it a little bit of that, like, sounds a bit twee to say, but in those like comic relief episodes, or when they make those specials in Children in Need, where they bring all the characters together for that one special, like it just about got away with that. Like, it was just so perfectly done.
Once they were there, I was really scared that they would just be there and they'd go and it would be a cameo, but then they stuck around, and I think I'm going to love it even more a second time round, because even though I won't get over that that amazement of them being there, I won't have that. The fact that I know they're sticking around, and the two of them, Garfield and Maguire, will have scenes together, and that Andrew Garfield will help, sort out Tobey Maguire's back, and they all three of them will hug.
Yeah, I do think there's a few moments you kind of like, Sam, as you say, you're skirting kind of like, you're very close to the line here between parody here. Like when
there were, I agree, Dan. There were a few scenes where it's just like, right, if this goes on for a little bit longer, it's a little bit But I think there's an important part about like this whole thing, this whole like multiverse thing, especially when it comes to Peter Parker and kind of why he is the perfect character to have all this and to introduce this world to. And it goes the same with Into the Spider-Verse. It's like Peter Parker, as Dan, you said earlier on the podcast, is this character who is young, he's vulnerable, he is still kind of like learning who he is, but whilst also trying to be Spider-Man and dealing with while everyone else around him in terms of superhero wise has already gone through that sort of that moral philosophy of what it takes to do the right thing. He is still having to come to terms with that, whilst also losing all the role models and all the people around him that he would naturally go to help with those quandaries. So, for example, Tobey Maguire has Norman Osborn to look up to and to be a sort of father figure in the absence of Uncle Ben, turns into a maniacal goblin and tries to kill everyone. Then he has Otto Octavius, father figure, looks up to him, turns into a maniacal killer. Like Andrew Garfield obviously has his best friend who turns into a goblin and tries to kill everyone, and then ends up like not being able to save his girlfriend. And then you've got Tom Holland's Spider-Man, who looks up to Tony Stark, and then Tony Stark dies, bringing half the people back into the universe, and then Aunt May dies. And it's just a character who is so alone and so just needs someone else to go, I know what you're going through. I know exactly everything that's happening to you, which is why the multiverse stuff just rings so much truer to a character like Peter Parker, because more than anyone else in the MCU, he's just the one character who's just begging for someone to put an arm around his shoulder and just go, I know what you're going through. And this is one way that we can deal with it, and we can deal with it together, because that's the one thing he never has as a character, especially in the MCU. And when you're dealing with such massive things like the multiverse and trying to explain that to a mass audience, like he's just a perfect character to use for that.
And I think that point you say of like people, and he says it in the thing, you don't know what I'm going through, don't say you do, when he loses May, and you have that incredible scene between the three of them where he meets them for the first time, and you have kind of Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker and Andrew Garfield's there, and they say like, I don't know what you're going through, but I like when Tobey Maguire says, when I lost Uncle Ben, and we're taken back to that moment in our minds. And then at first I thought he was Andrew Garfield was going to say the same again, and then he mentioned Gwen. And I'd almost forgotten about that. I've kind of and what I loved about their treatment of all these characters was that it didn't just say, all right, we're just going to drop this character in, you say a few funny things, it's gonna go. The things that happened in those films, and especially I think with Andrew Garfield's character, I think Andrew Garfield's character, I like it. I liked his interpretation of the character. He was a bit too cool for my liking. I think Peter Parker should be a bit more geeky than he was. But the fact that at the end of kind of Amazing Spider-Man 2, where he's not able to save Gwen, to see him now and to see how much that has weighed on him, that's such an incredible kind of character development for him. It kind of, any problematic elements with those films, it saved a lot of them, because suddenly his character is so much more interesting, having him go through that darkness. And when he mentions that, and it did catch me off guard, because obviously the Uncle Ben dying is kind of a like a point in the sand for this character, typically in the comics anyway. And obviously we've seen it both with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, that happen. So when he mentions Gwen, it did kind of just like take me aback a little bit. And suddenly you see in his eyes, I think his performance is fantastic. I think he has taken the role and taken that character in another direction, which feels natural, which feels interesting. And the characters of the two kind of former Spider-Men, when they show up, they say, we're here because we're here to help Peter. We need to find him to help him, because it's not just we're here to fight some people. It's we need to support him, what he's going through. And I was just blown away by that. And it would have been very easy for them to just forget about the old films, to have the characters, but not really include the old films. Like one of the first things that kind of Dr. Octopus says, he talks about kind of the power of the sun kind of in his hand. And that's like, I was surprised by that, because it is just taken the character from a moment in this film. And if you don't know the film, it doesn't mean anything. But the fact that they are taking the characters immediately from those films and bringing them into this world was fascinating to me. And Marvel are really good at certain things. They're incredible at certain moments, like the portal scene, the moment where you first see a new Spider, like when you first see kind of Andrew Garfield through that, in the distance, through that whole, that's goosebumps moment. They're fantastic at that, but they're also really, really good at having these incredibly large scale ideas and concepts, but written and done in a way that just makes sense. Like the scale of the story of this film should be almost impossible to do. We've seen it attempted in kind of this kind of scale in other types of comic book films, and it's failed. But like they manage to make the whole idea of this multiverse completely understandable, and you don't question it. It might be slightly convenient how they get there, but that's something you just kind of take on board. But
it was a lot simpler than I thought it was going to be based on the trailers. It was a lot cleaner, and I like the fact that, and some people have criticised Marvel for this, but I'm actually liking it, that they've not fully committed to the multiverse yet. Like they're just dabbling with it slightly, just like opening up the oven door slightly, just going, oh, it's not, no, not ready yet. Like just to help everyone, because when they get there, it's going to get bonkers. Yeah. Like really, really bonkers, to the point where, you know, in terms of like comic books, the whole industry just had to reset itself on how bonkers the multiverse stuff got with Marvel and DC, like reset themselves multiple times because of how out of control. When you open up this Pandora's box of multiverse, like the only way to shut it is literally start everything again from ground up. Someone biting a spider, someone killing Bruce Wayne's parents, like it's the only way. So they know they've got to really touch it with kid gloves, which makes me think that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is going to be, I think it's going to deal a lot more with the multiverse conceptually and really sort of ground it in something before. And I don't think even after that we're going to see much of the multiverse having an effect really on anything. I think it's going to be phase 5 until we really see much of what impact this is actually going to have on anything.
We look at the Infinity Saga. I mean, that drip fed the stones right from Captain America, the first Avenger. That's been drip fed, and it wasn't really until like 4 or 5 films before the end of the entire kind of saga that you actually said, okay, all right, then we're doing this now.
Yeah, and that was a much simpler concept to explain, which is just like, man needs 6 things. He's got 6 things. There you go. Whereas here, it's just like they've not really committed to who the next big bad is going to be. Is it going to be that guy from the Eternals, or is it going to be Kang? And it's quite interesting that those 2 sort of big bads are looming over the horizon, that you kind of got Kang, the Conqueror, and then someone even worse than them, like looming in the shadows. So
and then we've also got Harry Styles.
Then we've also got Harry Styles. Woo! Harry Styles.
Can we just talk a little bit about the villains? Because
can we talk at length about Willem Dafoe?
Well, I know you want to do that, Sam, but I just want to briefly just say one thing I really, really loved that I could have just basked in for a while. And again, it's something that I think you can only do as a Spider-Man film. Think back to Civil War, where they're in the thick of this very intense conflict between Captain America and Iron Man, and then suddenly we just cut to Queens, and then there is this little interlude that in another film would be a really strange gear change, because we're suddenly taken out of the action into this quite offbeat scene between Peter Parker and Tony Stark, and it just feels right. And there are lots of those kinds of moments here where, think back to the early kind of films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's no way they'd let a director do this, but to actually sit in an apartment with all of Spider-Man's greatest villains together, working together to try and cure each other, and they're not the big bad. The big bad is actually, when's Doctor Strange going to break out of his prison and come and stop this? That was just really, really an interesting wrinkle I found.
A brave move that everyone thought this was just going to be Spider-Man battling 6 villains for 2.5 hours.
Sinister Six.
And, and it wasn't that at all. It was. I found it really interesting, like how this film dealt. And I know, I guess it's because we just watched this movie, but we've already spoken a lot about morality. But how this movie did deal with the morality of being a superhero and really explored it. How there was this young boy who didn't just, all he wanted to do was try and save these people. And, you know, I think obviously Willem Dafoe is just the MVP of this movie. He's just, you know, he is just the villain that the MCU has just been missing throughout the entirety of its run. He, you know, he's camp, he's cocky. He has got more of an edge in this film that I think he ever had in the first.
I find him much more threatening in this than his previous.
I don't know. If you watch that first film, I remember watching it for the very first time. He's very menacing, and he generally is the only villain in Spider-Man's history you genuinely feel terrified of.
But then, as I said to you, Kris, like, what is great about Willem Dafoe's performance is that it's lifted straight out of Tobey Maguire's film and put into what is a slightly more realistic universe of films. Like, the MCU is slightly more grounded than the very bright pop arty Tobey Maguire movies of the late 90s, early 2000s.
Almost cartoony.
Yes. So, and I think that's what makes it a lot more. I think that's what heightens those moments of, you know, real sinister villainy in Dafoe's performance than probably you wouldn't have seen in the original Spider-Man, because the original Spider-Man was just like, you know, popcorn, like, oh, this is fun, oh, look at he's a villain, oh yeah, you know. But here it was the same performance, but I think that genuine menace was a lot more heightened because of the film that he was planted in, and it's, you know, he's and I think it's just so great that they gave him license to be that camp and villainous, like, and to overact as much as he did in that role.
Because I've seen an interview with him where he talks about kind of taking on the role and saying that he spoke to kind of the director and the producer and said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I don't want to just be a cameo. I don't want to be just nostalgia. If I'm going to do this, I want to be in it full force. I want to be doing the stunts. I want to be, because it's all or nothing. And I remember him talking about the original Spider-Man and talking about the fact of he loved that film, and he kind of loved the idea of, I mean, you think of Willem Dafoe as this really serious kind of actor, kind of doing these avant-garde films and stuff like that, and then showing up in a Spider-Man film. But his commitment to it, and he loves to do that, and found it really interesting, and just said, like, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it, but I'm going to go all in on this. You can't just have me for a cameo, because that's just not going to be enough.
It did feel like he'd heard they were doing a Spider-Man film, and he just rocked up, and nobody said to him, could you leave, please? I said, let's just leave him and just let him do his thing, and we'll write the script around Willem Dafoe.
Yeah. It's so when I heard that laugh, I just gripped Chris's leg, and I was just like, brilliant. If this guy is in it, because I was initially a little bit disappointed that, you know, they had Sandman and Lizard Guy in it, and they were pretty much CG all of the time. And again, I have to say this again, for another Marvel property, the CG wasn't great, and I don't know whether it was an intentional thing to make the CG look like it did.
I think they did do it on purpose.
Late thousands, and I thought, oh, is this because they've not got the actors?
I thought that as well.
But then the actors turn up at the end of the movie, and I thought that was a really strange. Obviously, there must have been some sort of schedule clash or whatever. But surely it'd be cheaper to get the actors and just put them in front of a green screen than it is to animate these characters all of the time. I thought that was a bit of a shame. I didn't think Jamie Foxx really was really giving it his all.
I actually quite liked Jamie Foxx. I think and part of that is because his character in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is not great. It's very puntastic, and you have the horrible battle in like the weird electrical field where they play the music, or it's all very, very strange. So the character's not kind of well judged and well treated in that. So it does feel like just a second chance at it.
Yeah, when he comes back as like full Electro with the arc reactor, that's when I felt he kind of like, oh, this is what he could have been.
Yeah.
In Amazing Spider-Man 2. But Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina, who's just one of my favourite actors anyway, like Doc Ock is just one of the most heartbreaking like villains. Like he's in the PS4 Spider-Man game. He's in one of my favourite Spider-Man runs with Dan Slott. And just like the love that he has for Peter is just heartbreaking, that he, just could not get over the control that these tentacles have over him. And like Alfred Molina just sells it. Just like that's what Sam Raimi got in, and that's what this film made me realize. What Sam Raimi just nailed, especially in those first two Spider-Man films, were the villains and where they came from and casting them, and just seeing them back again. It just made you realize like this is what the MCU's missing, and it's long been a criticism of the MCU that the villains were never that. Like they got the superheroes on point, but the villains were never that really memorable or had much sort of staying power. But like
I think part of the reason was because like some of like the most interesting and well-known villains are Spider-Man's villains, and the two big ones are Green Goblin and Doc Ock, and they've already been done.
Ock, yeah.
So I love the idea of like, okay, we want to do it, so okay, we don't. It's been really difficult to replace them. Well, let's just get the original guys back in because they were the perfect casting. Let's not try and reinvent the wheel here. Willem Dafoe was Green Goblin. Yes, please. That just ticks the box. You don't try and change it if it's not broken. Just figure out a way to bring him in. And it's
same with J.K. Simmons. Like,
exactly.
It was just, you wonder whether this is why they've not committed to the multiverse fully yet. Because did they just do it to pull off this massive like nostalgia trip to get everyone back into one movie, and then like, yeah, we'll worry about the multiverse later.
I would love to see some of like the screenshots and kind of the analysis of those just a few shots of the multiverse where it starts to open and it shows you figures in there, because I guarantee you people will know who they are.
I recognised Rhino. I saw Rhino.
I did, yeah. I thought I saw Rhino. I thought he would. I wasn't sure if that's who it was that I'd seen, so I thought maybe they might have gone for someone. I reckon there's probably bigger characters in there that someone will pause and zoom in and kind of enhance, and you'll find out. I mean, Kang is probably there. All those things. So you know that the way they do their Easter eggs, they'll just be full up with all that stuff.
Yeah, Paul Giamatti was there going, "Come on, Rhino!"
Come on! Like I mean, earlier in the podcast we talked about kind of the bits where they kind of almost straight into parody, and probably that scene where they're all talking about their favourite villains is probably where it comes closest. Where he talks about Andrew Garfield talks about, I just fought a guy in a rhino suit, and it's just kind of like it's just meta enough to be okay without pushing it too far into looking at the screen and saying, yes, I'm breaking that fourth wall.
Yes.
Yeah, just like the dynamic between all of them was just fantastic. And the scene where Andrew Garfield, as I say, I absolutely loved him in this film. The scene where he saves MJ.
Agree.
Is like heartbreaking in a good way, that he's able to kind of recover from that loss in a way. It was just beautifully done. Because like when you see her start to fall, it's happened in all the films, kind of like, and it's just that trope again. And to then snatch it away when kind of Tom Holland gets snatched away, but then to be saved by Andrew Garfield was just perfect. And I think it just rounded up, all the characters got rounded off in a really nice way, and they were all improved on. There was no one there that just felt there just for the numbers, basically. Maybe Sandman and Lizard, because they didn't really have anything to do. But of all the villains, they weren't really the best ones in there. No. Venom's the only one technically missing.
Should Should we talk about that?
No.
Because that was almost what ruined the film for me.
Really?
Was bloody when...
I don't
Oh
like
my
it.
God, just that character is just atrocious.
I don't mind that. I don't mind that character.
Really? Have you seen Venom?
I've seen Venom. I've not seen
the film?
Carnage.
Oh my God.
Don't get me wrong. It's not. I'm not saying I love the Venom films. I found it entertaining enough.
I'm glad that he had his little moment, and then he got zapped back, and
it's just a way to introduce Venom into the MCU. That's all.
Yeah, but it might not be. It might not be the Venom.
Oh no,
that we know. I like the fact that
it's not. I don't think it'll be Tom Hardy.
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I that's what I like is that they've both given themselves an out in terms of that just might not come to anything. Yes, we want Tom Hardy to do it, or the third option, Venom will be in it, but it won't be
exactly.
The one
so
that
they
we
can
all
do
know
whatever
is
they want.
slightly rubbish.
But the fact of the matter is, you've now introduced the idea of Venom into the MCU, and you can, and that's both. I mean, obviously, you've got contractual rights around the character, but they don't have to use Tom Hardy because there is a narrative reason why.
Yeah. It would be someone else.
And also, my first cheer that somehow just manifested in my throat was seeing Matt Murdock.
Oh, yes.
I think I kind of expected that one.
I didn't.
Yeah, I expected it, but I didn't quite believe it until I saw it.
To be honest, I should preface everything by saying I still can't quite believe what I saw at the cinema last night. Full stop. I'm still, I can't imagine. It's almost like I've unearthed a film that I completely missed out on, and that came out back in 2002.
It kind of did feel like if they were to end the MCU with one movie, it would be a movie like that.
I mean,
just let's just get all the characters back.
And next year, I'm actually going to go and watch a Flash film just so I can see my favourite Batman, which would be Michael Keaton.
Yes.
Who's betting that the Flashpoint film matches up with what they've done here?
Well, it won't. It's a completely different agenda, but yeah, but that idea that we're going back to 1992 was the last time we saw this character, not 2002, 1992.
Yeah.
And that was the Batman I grew up on.
But I think in the same, absolutely agree, and I feel kind of the same way about this one, bringing especially Tobey Maguire and Willem Dafoe in this. It almost felt like, and it kind of factors into what we were talking about earlier about people who don't have knowledge of those older films, how would they feel about it? It almost felt made for us because we were 16, we were prime age for those films when they came out, and that's 19, 20 years ago, and it's kind of that's wild.
But crucially, Dan, we're the right demographic. We've got the ones with the disposable income that are going to go and brave Omicron and sit on the seats, take our seats in the cinema.
Absolutely.
It's genuinely, I think of it like I think of Endgame at the moment, because it's fresh in my mind. But Endgame, you say, Kris, you're I don't believe what I saw last night. That's how I felt about Endgame. It was such a. The only kind of problem I have with No Way Home is I think the final battle's a bit meh. It's all a bit messy, I think. Just a lot of people hitting each other around some scaffolding. By the way, love the Statue of Liberty having Captain America's shield. that was very clever.
For all 5 minutes that it had it.
Yeah. That's the only kind of bit that I was
No, I liked it. I think they earned that.
I liked it.
For having all that sitting around talking, I think they earned smashy.
Smashy is fine. It's just the battle was a bit muddled. Endgame's battle is fantastic.
But that's the whole point. They're we need to get organised. They have that moment so that we need to be a bit more strategic, and that's when you get that wonderful shot of the three of them coming over the moon.
Oh yeah, there's your money shot. That I think was in the trailers, but the other two had been CGI'd out.
Yeah, I've still got Sam's handprint on my leg. He was gripping it so hard.